We just finished filming with Forge Financial Services, and they've been doing a lot of live in-person events, and they wanted to dabble into virtual events. And so we just did a full all-day long live virtual event using Zoom, and we have a lot to talk about.
So I wanted to talk about a tool that we use a ton here that I feel like I don't see super discussed in the video world, which is ProPresenter. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take us over to change over our stage display that we use back to the Forge one. And I'm going to go to the Forge playlist that we had set up for them. So essentially what you can see here are a few different things. So bottom right here, this is the interface down here. And then up here is what they would see out on the stage. And this is me. But basically what's super cool about ProPresenter is that each thing can kind of have timers on it. And those timers will update up here. So in the top section up here, we have a section timer that shows how long that section's supposed to go. Then we have kind of an item timer is what we've named it, which is how long that item goes. You have the actual time, and then you have what that item is, and then you have what item is next. So if I click on one of these, you can see, hey, Courtney and Kevin are going to be on the screen. They're going to be doing attendee arrival, and that's going to be 15 minutes long. So you can see that 15 minutes counting down, that 2 hours countdown. You can see how long the session is supposed to be, and you can see what's next. So then if I move to what's next, you can see all that updates. And so all of this is super cool, and it's super configurable, which we love. There's a couple of things about it that we don't love. And
one last thing about the setup, and then very dark behind is whatever we would be showing live on program. Right now it's like doing an Apple TV screensaver or something.
So that way it doesn't loop this infinitely in the background.
Sure, but normally that would be whatever the program is. Very dark, but just subtly there to let them see which shot we're on.
Right.
That's all.
And so basically with this, there's, we also can use it. Actually, can you go ahead and is the key on for ProPresenter? I'll go ahead and show you. You can have the lower thirds pop up. So this also lets us trigger within that section, and you can kind of see me clicking right above there. Trigger within that section the different elements of it. So it's a super good way to keep us super on track with things. And it makes it where we can even do a loop we had of ads they were showing during the program, during their breaks. It just absolutely everything was in here. So this is our run of show. This is our timers. This is our keeping track of what's on screen and what's not on screen. All of that, all in one place.
And one last thing that we did not do on this show, but something that's important to mention. If we did have a video that we were playing back from ProPresenter, then that stage display would show the countdown of how much time is left in that video. So if it's a 2-minute video, you would watch. We have a different timer that pops up during that experience and kind of clears off some other things and lets you see that countdown to 0, and then it goes back. In this show, we didn't have any pre-recorded content, so that didn't show up. But that's just an important thing to know. A lot of our guests haven't had the ability to see a countdown timer of the video that's playing back, especially in a live event. So that's a really cool feature that ProPresenter has.
Yeah, it's all super awesome. And so there's a couple of weird little things that would happen, though. So as you can see, this timer, right, that's currently going has 7 minutes left. And you can kind of tell down here, it's hard to see, but this is that item timer. And so with that item timer right there, I can pause, I can stop this, I can reset it. So let me actually go ahead and do that, stop it and reset it back to 10 minutes. And if I start it again, this time it works because it loves me, right? But that makes sense. But if I reset it and I set it to a different time, actually we've got 15 minutes for this section. You can see down here it says 15 minutes, but up here it still says 10. And if I start this timer, it is counting down 15 minutes here, but it's counting down 10 minutes up here. So that's a weird little bug we ran into. And what that means is there's basically no way for us to update a timer in real time. So we had a couple of run of show things where one section would go over and then another section we can use that time, another section would go under, and it's like, oh, we've got 5 more minutes we can add to this section. And so Doing that's hard. The other thing that's hard is I can't rename a presentation in here. So in this menu, I can't rename what the presentation is. So I normally have the time put in each presentation. The problem with this is that I can't edit it in this view. If I go up to the entire list of everything, which I can't use this view because it just shows, there's no way to like click through a whole show in here, then I can edit it. Right, I can edit. It's where is it? It's rename. Yeah, it's right in there, but I can't do that for some reason in the playlist view, and so that just means it starts getting a little bit like, oh man, I need to tell them that this isn't 10 minutes. It's actually 5 minutes. You know, so there's just a couple of little things that if they were tweaked would make it super duper awesome. One of the coolest things though we did was during Q&As, and this will be the hardest thing for us to show without the actual setup. So it's just going to be what it is. I'll show an actual screen of it here in a minute. Actually, if you just go off of the two view here for a minute, go back to the normal one, I can actually show a video clip of it from ProPresenter. So let me go to that. So if I play this video here, there we go. So you can see basically we had Q&A that was happening where someone could ask a question and we put it onto the screen. The interface that we developed for this is super cool. So you can go back to ProPresenter view here. Basically, I took stage messages, and when I show the stage message, you can see in the top right corner how it would show up on the stage display. So you can see this will be a question. And that would then fill in to the actual slide. And so it would fill into the actual slide in a way where you could read it. So it would go to both places at once. This was so awesome because all we had to do in order to have this super high quality Q&A feed is just cut to the graphic and then paste their question in, and then the presenters can read it in this super big font, and then also you could see it on the actual screen in the branded font and everything. Our one problem with this is that this takes over stage messages, which is another useful feature to have because it's nice to say, you're late, you're late, whatever it is. One nice thing is you can actually type in this. As long as this current message is shown, it won't change it. You hide it, and then when you show it again, it shows the new message. But then it's nice to be able to communicate non-verbally because IFB really throws a lot of people off. If they're talking and then all of a sudden hear, hey, you got to wrap up 5 minutes, they kind of just freeze, which makes sense because it's a lot to process. So it's nice to be able to just kind of show something on the screen. But Q&A was at the end of each section, and so it was this weird thing where I needed like two different stage messages. Now, there is also a feature in ProPresenter called just general messages, but you have to select your theme each time on here, and you can see how it's about like 3 different clicks to get to the thing, and then I can do it, and then it'll show up. It was iffy. The stage message thing was a lot cleaner because they also could see it on the stage display, and so I like that a lot more, but...
So what's cool about all of this is that it's the ability to have 2 different screens doing 2 totally different things but synchronized together.
Yes.
So that's the part that I think you guys killed it on it. And that trade-off of the announcement was not that big of a deal. I mean, we had IFB in their ear where we could have said something. And I think the quickness of being able to paste that in, have them see that super clear. I'm not sure. Do we have a way to just show stage display? If so, that would be cool to show. But just being able to see that, yeah, there you go. So you're late, really big like that, and then have it also formatted really nicely on that Q&A. That was super well done, guys. So I think overall, I feel like that was super great.
It was really reassuring being in there. To be able to look at that and go, okay, there's 3 minutes left on this, and what's the next thing coming up? Okay, because in the past we've had to have like sheets of paper kind of taped to things,
right?
But you could just look at that all day long and see what's coming up next.
It gave a ton of clarity there.
Yeah.
I think what I saw overall is everything inside this production was just so smooth because they put so much energy into an incredible run of show. It had very clear indications of when we're supposed to show a lower third or supposed to show a graphic. Everything about that just went super awesome. So I feel like, and then being able to put all that like you guys did into ProPresenter just killed it. It made it feel so smooth, so clear of everything that was supposed to happen. I think overall it was really great. I think we have a couple other lessons learned on ProPresenter, the countdown to live stream starter.
So we had a confusing thing where they basically had a time when the stream was supposed to start. The problem was, and we're going to talk more about this later, this was actually a Zoom meeting because they wanted to do this Q&A. They wanted to be able to bring people on from the audience. So this was actually just a really big Zoom meeting. Because of that, one of the team members had joined early, which opened the meeting to other people. And so we wanted to be able to have like lobby music. So we had already kind of started the live stream, but we had a countdown to when the start was supposed to be. And so it became this confusing thing of, wait, are we about to go live? And it's like, well, kind of, like we already are live, but it's like we aren't starting the show yet. So we needed some different terminology internally for what that should be called. It probably should have been like, begin preparation, like some staging that we could have done. We also needed, we wished that we could have the timer on our teleprompter also. Right now, there's not really a good way for us to feed that into our teleprompter view. We were using Presenter View for their presenter notes. And let me try to think, what was the other thing? Also, I realized that session timers, which are the kind of thing that we show, hey, here's when the session should end. For this show specifically, we needed to have them always counting down to a time, not counting down an amount of time. So for instance, this session should end at 1:15 p.m. Have it count down to 1:15 p.m., not count down for 2 hours and 5 minutes. That was a change we made during the production, and it made it where we didn't have to do any more math. We could kind of just see, okay, well, we have 15 minutes left, and there's 3 sections to go. They should each be 5 minutes, or this one should be 3 minutes, this one should be 10 minutes. Stuff like that became a lot easier. But we really love ProPresenter. It ticks so many boxes for us. It enables so much. And we just think it's like, as much as it's meant for more live production, different use cases, we think if you're doing a live event like this, it's a really invaluable tool to be able to communicate with the talent on stage in just a way that integrates everything together. And it's super magical.
So one last question. You guys, you were sitting next to one of the team members was next to you. It seemed like the two of you were kind of collaborating quite a bit, kind of hit some of the high points of that. Seemed like a really important thing of the producer, essentially, is what she was really playing the role of, sitting next to you. Her name's Catherine. So Catherine, you talk about that relationship, what that worked like. How was that?
Yeah, it was super good. I mean, it was the biggest thing that I felt, though, as the ProPresenter operator. Most of it was super easy. It was during our Q&A section where things got tough because I would have to copy the message out of a computer and then rely on Jump Desktop getting that message synced to my clipboard on my local computer, and then rely on Jump Desktop syncing it to the ProPresenter computer, because we're kind of going through 3 layers of remote desktop there. And so I was always struggling with that. And then we're trying to work with Cami to figure out if we can bring that person onto the live stream. And then we're also working with Courtney, right? Is that the name? Or
Catherine.
Catherine, thank you. Sorry, Courtney's on stage, Catherine. Everyone had C names, and that deeply confused me for some reason. Yeah, hers was spelled with a K. I just mean harsh. You know what I mean. And so she would tell me, like, she would be like messaging the person on Zoom, seeing if they were willing to come on screen. And there was one time where we had someone who wanted to not be on screen. I had missed that communication because I was focused on getting their question onto the screen. And then by the time the question was asked, one of our onstage talent asked the person to turn their camera on to be on stream, and they did. And then there was kind of this conversation like, hey, I told you they didn't want to be on screen. And I was like, man, I missed that because I was so involved in this world. So there definitely was the need for someone to be the like kind of more overarching producer of who just keeps up with time and just keeps up with details like that and says, hey, we're not bringing them onto the call. We're not going to do that for this person.
So I think if you're making a production like this, it was clear, like from my perspective of my viewpoint, what I saw was maybe not some of those nuanced details that Isaac's mentioning, but the overall flow that I saw is she was able to be a rapid response answer to any issues we had. around timing, what should happen next, if a change needed to happen. It was very easy to rely on her, find out she's the one that made the run of shows. So that was super helpful. And I think during any production like this, if we can ever have that person that role of that person physically in this room, that was ideal. We also had one of the other team members, she wasn't able to make it, so she was over Zoom, and that worked out great too. So we had a private Zoom in addition to the public Zoom that we were doing the event on, able to communicate with her, and that worked out really great.
It was actually really useful a couple of times because she would say, hey, the Zoom's a little quiet. That was our biggest weird thing with Zoom, was we got a lot of people saying it was quiet
at first,
but we fixed the volume with that. But getting that feedback in real time of like, hey, I'm not noticing this or this thing, being able to just hear that, but from someone who's actually on the call and not just in here, helpful. It was really helpful.
So Morgan, talk to us about Unreal Engine. We did all of this set was done in Unreal Engine. I don't know if we have a way to easily pull up what the set looked like, but I'd love to hear some of the things that we went through with Unreal.
Yeah, so as you'll see there, this was some of the shots here. We ended up using, this is a set that we've used before. We've kind of modified, we've added some paintings into the background. But a big difference here is we ended up doing a combination of path tracing and lumen, real-time illumination on the moving shots. So you'll kind of see here.
This shot's path traced.
Yeah, this shot was path traced. So we ended up path tracing the wide and the medium shot. And then we left the side shots, which were their individual cameras, tracked and rendering in real time. But due to them being kind of blurry and out of focus for the background, we could lessen the quality of the Unreal Engine. We could drop down the high instead of epic for the rendering settings. And that gave us all the frame rate that we needed to be able to move our cameras in real time. I think overall it ended up turning out really, really well. This is the first time we've kind of done that hybrid workflow for this, but I think overall it worked out in our favor. We ended up, Andre, you and I worked on the lighting of the set and ended up darkening it overall, if I remember correctly, to kind of get the exposure to what you're seeing here now.
Yeah, and it's interesting. The client said, I want it bright and white, and then I made it dark gray. So, but they were happy with it. They loved it because they saw the light coming in. I don't know if there's a way that's easy for us to show the actual like wide shot, but we have these light rays kind of coming in through the window, and so it's kind of a funny thing where at first my tendency is to give them a white shot. In fact, what's funny is we even had another person coming and touring the studio, and they were like, ooh, I like that where it's all bright and white. And it's like, actually, that's a pretty dark gray, I'm thinking internally. So don't be afraid of adjusting that. What they actually mean, I think, is the sun, seeing the sun coming in, like, oh, look at these pretty sun rays coming inside. Right, it's brightly lit. But the wall, I went ahead and made a dark gray. And the reason I did that is this is going to be a live key. A lot is happening in real time. And so on that very first session, guys, right at the beginning, yeah, there you go. There's a wide shot right there that we just skipped over. But the reason why I did it that way is on Ultimat, it will really show if there's a bright spot and there's a problem with a key. It's very obvious to kind of see that. It's the one drawback. And so there we go. So there's a wide shot there. And so that way, I mean, her feet or bottom of her legs are in a kind of a brighter spot, but the rest of it you can see is actually fairly dark around her, where before when that was a bright white wall, it was just a lot. And then also, like, we want to see her. And so just remember, your eye goes to the brightest thing in the screen. So we're trying to like zone in on paying attention to her. And I think this worked out really good. What was awesome is they had that set of paintings that are their paintings. So that was super cool because we were able to actually upload their artwork and put it right behind it. So that looked really awesome as well. So
and we used the artwork thing that we've had from a previous live event that we did, and we were able to import that in to make it super like easy to put those up there. Now we ended up enlarging those quite a bit, and Andre, like we've talked about the dip. I don't know if people can see it where that red painting is.
Right.
The wall kind of dips in there. We ended up pulling it off the wall, which maybe made it more floaty. I mean, that's part of Unreal, right? We can do things that physically wouldn't be possible.
Right.
On some of this.
I think it worked out. I think the one thing that's funny, though, is like the size of this painting, even though it looks very kind of similar to the others. It's like massively bigger because it's like recessed a little more in the wall. So we got there, and so I felt really good about that. And I think the nice thing about the path trace is like in these chairs that you see here, it really it does a good job of not having the weird mesh really showing through in a weird way. The path trace is clearly a visually superior thing. It took about 30 minutes per still.
Right.
So it was not fast.
Now, mind you, everybody, like I'm capturing the viewport here in this. Now, some people might hear path trace and think you're going through like the render queue or like the movie queue and loading a still image into the Ultimate. I have not had a great experience loading still images into the Ultimate. So in general, I try to avoid that. And I wanted to still have the environment be live enough that if we needed to do another render, like another path trace, we could in the background. If we needed to make a change during one of the breaks. Because during this live event, we had 15-minute breaks and 30-minute breaks. And even, I think, an hour at some point for lunch. So we had time to make changes if we had to, like if a camera got moved in height or something like that.
And that's because this was training, basically. So they had like worksheets they were doing, and it's like, hey, spend the next 20 minutes doing this worksheet, spend the next 15 minutes doing this part of the worksheet. So there was a lot of that, which was really amazing for us to get all of our stuff together every once in a while, check in, make sure it's like, hey, is this text good? Is this thing good? And then they'd be like, yeah, no, fix this. And it was nice to get, it's not often for us in a real time event to be able to, in a live event, to get kind of that real time feedback, on a normal filming day where we're doing a video and then we stop the recording, then we can talk to them for a second and they can say some feedback. But during a live event, most of the time it's like, at the end of the whole event, they're like, yeah, man, I really wish I could have whatever. And it's like, oh, man, if only we could have known that sooner. So this was nice to be able to get that feedback in real time.
There was quite a bit of reframing that happened because they were coming in and out. There'd be two people on and one person be on, and then we'd have to move the table. And
they were standing.
Yeah, they were standing. So every now and then, so as soon as they came on and we had 25 seconds before live, I was framing them up because they would eventually settle in a spot and you'd get them framed up and get the headroom right, and then, man, it was right into the live. They were counting down while that was happening.
So from your perspective, how was it so you were running camera?
Yeah, I was in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so talk about how was the communication and that experience?
Well, having IFB, so that was great. So I could hear counting down, we're coming down to it. And then, someone could come on and say, hey, adjust headroom on whatever camera or, touch focus on this or that. That was very easy. I didn't have a way other than text to respond back. IFB went out a few times. We were using Unity, and I don't know why. Every now and then it would go. A couple of times it went out, and I guess everybody in here was screaming, "Focus the camera!" And I'm like, I didn't know until somebody texted or something. But other than that, it was great. And having that, knowing what's coming next. Oh wait, there's going to be two people on next time. I'll be ready to jump on there and frame them up really quickly. That worked out really well.
Yeah, for sure. So I don't know why it cut out either. We need to look at that.
Yeah,
it's like
I'd love to
Unity's
test it.
Almost amazing, but definitely some phone.
Yeah, at NAB, I kind of talked to a couple different people. Unity, I think, works really well for our workflow because of the remote audio engineer portion of it. But I think there's definitely some in the future of like belt packs or something more kind of permanent.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that would be nice. To me, that would be a level of confidence to know that, hey, this thing is not going to go out for some unknown reason.
Right.
I do wish there was some kind of belt pack that existed that could just feed into our Unity that wasn't more of I don't know if that's a thing, but that wasn't based on the app or whatever, just because it would be nice to be able to be like, hey, here's the belt pack, but not have to have a whole separate system, because Unity does work super great at all our stations with all the features we need, especially because all those are directly wired in anyways. And it is nice to be able to last second, like, okay, just get the app on your phone, put an AirPod in and go, because you've got something. But it'd be nice to have something that's like, well, here's the headset,
For a role, you need something like that feels like dedicated and like concrete and won't go anywhere.
I did discover one thing. So I left Unity on the whole day. I didn't turn it off. And I love Audible, and so I'm always listening to audiobooks. So on the like lunch breaks and stuff, if I turn Audible on, it overrides everything.
Sure.
And shuts off all audio. So I'm like, I can't use Audible at all today.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to lose that connection.
Do you have the shakes? by the end of the day. Where's my Audible? Need to listen. I'm airplaying a little part of the video here that we could show. But Tyler, talk about the table. So in fact, make us go away, I guess, on that. But so you made this table here, so that thing's a real thing in the shot. That's the only other real thing besides people. Talk about that process real quick.
Yeah, so I'm in the process of developing a system where we can have interchangeable tabletops. We had two tabletops, one that had been made for a different show, and then this was the tabletop that came with the table. And then we absolutely cannot have any reflectivity at all on the tabletops because it just catches the green from the back, makes the tabletop in transparent. So what I ended up doing was getting some chalky paint that was so exciting to everybody. I don't know how many years ago everybody was painting everything with chalky paint, but man, it is absolutely flat. And that I can't remember the brand that I used, but it is super flat. That's the super stark white though, which I think ended up being a little too white. So I'll have to figure out how to tint it so it matches the tables in the background more.
I'm trying to rewind and play, but my well, anyway, there's that shot of it. There it goes.
So we have a 36-inch table and we have a 24-inch table, and we tried it with the 36-inch table. I went out and bought a tabletop, or actually somebody ran out and got it. Found a tabletop that we could use, and painted it with this same color.
There we go.
But it was huge. It looked gigantic on the screen. Plus, it was very stark white. And then we tried the 24-inch table, and it seemed to fit better. It was less imposing than the big 36-inch table.
Yeah, and so obviously, had we had a little more time, I would have wished those table legs themselves, this part here, was just not black, because all the other table legs are brown.
Yeah,
but
it's more of a natural kind of
wood color.
Yeah,
I think the light would have looked better on that too. By the way, we talk about having the custom fabrication shop next to us. It also helps that there's a place called the Restore across the street. You need a tabletop? I went in there, got a super good deal on a table with broken legs. We took the top and only paid for it, and it was like, so we'll be able to use that on other sets. It just didn't end up working on this one.
So I had to go on a shopping trip. It was like whirlwind tour of all the stores. So I went to the Restore first, and it's like, okay, I know this is here. It's there were several of them. And then I went to all the stores in town, and nobody had just tabletops for sale.
Yeah,
I had imagined that somebody would, but nobody.
Now
did.
we've purchased a whole series of IKEA tabletops, but they're all like rectangular in shape. So I think this is great. I think my feedback is, I don't think I want anything pure white. Like I mean, maybe if the set calls for it, but I could see how this, if it was just a little gray, it comes off a little more gray on this, but that tighter shot, I'm afraid to try to fast forward to it. It definitely had,
that is with no tint coming straight out of the can, and they can tint it just ever so slightly.
Yeah, that just feels a little harsh white, like I could see.
Too stark.
If that just had a little bit of gray in it, it would be good.
And then I've been looking online for, kind of a natural wood trestle kind of style of legs.
Yeah,
it's hard to find bar height.
Right, because it would be
tables
the A-frame shape of it would be so big. Well, great job on that. Way to pull that off at Socially You Table Enterprises.
You said we stopped being a construction company, but we do make tables.
Baby.
We make tables.
We're making some tables. But you're working on a solution. That'll be an upcoming debrief where we'll show exactly how to have these interchangeable tops, because that's the big thing we need to have. Because once we have that figured out, then we can just have a series of tops, and the goal is to make them very easy and quick to kind of
just
pop
switch
on,
out and be secure, though, not be wobbly or anything on the set.
Andre, can you pull that wide shot back up?
Maybe I'll give it a shot.
I did see the you got the beach ball of death there for a second. I just wanted to say, from like a client experience perspective, this is more on like the tech side of things, but it was fun watching you go in there. You had an AirPod in, and Morgan was in here with an AirPod in, and we would go into the room with all the clients and be like, so what would you like different? And so like the whole time they're like rearranging these paintings, and in my head I'm going, wow, it's crazy, because like on a physical set, that would be the most aggravating thing to ever let anybody do.
Hey, can we move these 40-foot paintings?
I do think that was
inches.
That was an achievement unlock of putting Morgan in my ear and he
Yes.
in my ear, because then I just walked in. I have an AirPod in my ear, which I feel pretty stupid about, and I kind of can't stand it when I interact with people with an AirPod in their ear. Just pro tip. But I just kind of disclaimed it, and I just said, hey, listen, Morgan's listening to me while we're talking, so we can talk this through. But that was really awesome, because then everything they were saying, I didn't have to relay any of that. He's in front of the computer and able to do it. It felt very frictionless.
Well, and it felt magical because you may say this in like joke, but you would go, okay, computer, blah 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 blah,
Yeah.
and it is just funny because like I know it's Morgan,
right?
but the
And they
magic
did
of it is
too,
so fun.
but they were in on the joke,
Yeah.
so it felt really fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that worked out really good.
But yeah, so it's just basically like, and I'm glad because at one point you guys were discussing like having the orange and the dark blue on the right with the light blue on the left. But I'm glad it got switched around, especially after like when you see some of the big groupings of like the Zoom viewers where you can kind of see the grid of all of them. They all had that exact art like up in their virtual background.
Thankfully, in that
through
exact
Zoom.
same order.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that is cool. It's always cool to be able to add a branding element. That always just makes that set just that feel that much more dialed. Whenever you can just make everything look awesome like that.
Speaking of Zoom people, so this is kind of just a good way to transition, and you could see them looking at the screen here. We had a gallery view set up, but this is not our ultimate goal for having gallery view on the displays, right? Because Morgan, you can talk a little bit about NAB. There was an announcement that was
So
gallery
they're
view.
bringing Zoom Tiles, which is going to be a dedicated app that can run on a Mac. So instead of us doing this, where we had a Zoom drone, as some people call it, join the call to display that, it'll naturally generate it, and we can have all sorts of different layouts and designs, which is going to be really cool once that's released. Unfortunately, it doesn't come out into a beta till May, and they didn't feel super comfortable giving us an alpha build of it yet, but hopefully soon. So for the next event that they do with us here, we'll have Zoom Tiles.
Yeah. And the thing for us that we've been thinking of, a big struggle we had was being able to show them gallery view, chat, and Q&A, because they wanted Q&A to come through the Q&A feature. And maybe we should have just said, don't use the Q&A feature, just have them ask in the chat. But the chat was relatively active during this event, so it was good to be able to filter out. And the biggest thing I found, you can't easily copy and paste out of Zoom chat. You can do it out of Q&A, but not out of Zoom chat for some reason. And maybe, I don't know, Morgan, it seems like you know.
Well, and talking with Andy, who developed some of the tools like Zoom ISO and Tiles and things like that are coming, he mentioned Zoom OSC and integrating that into something like H2R Graphics or some other vMix or vMix Live Titler or something like that to kind of extract the chat data. And I think there's room for a tool. Social Stream is one that can pull in a bunch of different chats, but I didn't see Zoom support natively in that.
Yeah, it's
maybe
there
it's coming.
somewhere. It became a thing of, well, we know what we know we can do. We can copy and paste.
Right.
It's like we know we can get that to work. So let's do that for this one. But we really want to look into how can we automate some of this and how can we display some of this? Because if we could have a way to display the chat and the Q&A and the Zoom gallery all on one screen, that would be incredible. And the Zoom chat, you can zoom in and make it really readable, but the Zoom Q&A, you can't. It's only the one size. You can kind of see in this shot just a little bit. This isn't intentionally what the shot was about, but in the top right-hand corner, you can see what the actual Q&A screen looked like on our end, and it was decently legible, but if you're out on the screen, it wasn't.
Sure, and leave that up. And so, Cammie, you got involved on the Zoom side of things. Talk about that experience of what you were doing and how you were bringing things in.
Yeah, so I've never done this before, and I was a little, I was given a little bit of an instruction, the day before, but mainly, day of, I was like, yeah, all right, this is what it is. Very simple. I have no idea if we can see Zoom A on this, but basically I had different inputs and outputs, and then I would have to manually, I would have to type in and find their name, and then I would have to go into the meeting and find them, and then, ask to mute or unmute, and that was the most tiring thing, is because sometimes they wouldn't, unmute themselves, even though I would ask them repeatedly. Yeah. So here's where...
So this is Zoom ISO. So this is the tool we were using.
this is where all participants would be listed. So I would find them and filter them through here and search by their name, or I could toggle through if they raised their hand. Also, then I have to go into outputs. And once I select one of the outputs here, they would show up over here. And I would have to have this drop-down list of people's names, and then when they were done, I would hit none.
Which
and
you
then
totally would be able to see if for some reason.
Yeah, I think Jump died on my.
Yeah.
My
Okay, I'm like, I see her screen clicking around on things, but I see
Yeah, I'm just airplaying.
not those things happening over on this side.
Airplaying and Jump
Listening
desktop.
on IFB, it was interesting to hear Isaac telling Cammie, okay, Cammie, find Cindy, and it'd be some Cindy Smith,
Which
and
was-
so you're having to go through the whole list of all the
You could
vast
type
number of
their name
participants.
Which was,
Yeah.
yeah, I could
But it was
type
just
the
funny.
name.
It was like,
Yeah.
oh, you got to find this person. Hurry.
Yeah, the one thing, that was something that stressed me out so much, which there was no way we could have preparation of who was going to go on because it was like random in the moment. But that was something that I was like, I hope my typing skills in the classes from 5th grade are prepped for me to
Hilarious.
type their names so fast that it was just like, oof.
It was a pretty cool feature to see some
Yeah.
of the participants actually showing up on the.
For sure.
That's got to be great for interaction. It's got to
Yeah.
be great for the audience to think, dang, this is real. These are real people.
So we pinned and spotlighted, or whichever term,
Spotlighted.
this main view, right? So, and then I don't know if we can pull back up that behind the scenes shot that I was saying to pause on, but if that's still there to show what that final output is. And so then you don't see the Q&A underneath there, but as soon as Isaac would copy and paste that into ProPresenter, then in perfect font size and everything would be the question that person was asking.
Right
Well-
underneath the.
And a big
two
lesson
pictures,
we've
yeah.
learned is at first, because some of these things you're ironing out as you're doing it. So what was happening is we're saying over IFB, like, go to the question, whatever it is, and we're talking about it and showing it. At first, the talent on screen is reading the question word for word for word. And so it's just super awkward, and it's kind of like the person's up on the screen, but it's kind of like what's happening because they're not talking because the talent is speaking for them on their behalf. So we changed that, and as the day went on, we just said, hey, listen, just bring on Susan, John, and say, hey, what's your question? And then we would pop the question up underneath as they said it out loud. And of course, they could say it differently, but still, that's the essence of their question is what they typed in. And that worked so much smoother.
Yeah.
So overall, this is awesome. This is where I'd like to bring up real quick. We were doing a more fancy version of a recording with a clean feed, Morgan. So talk just real quick about one of the features of ATEM and how we were exporting the recording, and how that's different from the live Zoom.
Sure. Yeah. So one of the things is they had let's see here. I don't know if you can see it in any of these shots, which you can.
Yeah, I was trying to click
Yeah,
through and see.
you can kind of see it there. So in the mid row of monitors there, you'll see live training, which is kind of a bug. Yep, you can see it more there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of a on-screen graphic. We call it a bug in the news world that indicated to the people on Zoom that this is live, that these people that they're seeing on the screen are interacting with them in real time. Well, we found out that there were some members that have signed up for this training that weren't able to make it. So they were going to watch the recording after the fact. And for that, we wanted to be able to record what's called a clean feed. So the ATEM has this feature called clean feed that lets you pick off the ATEM at different points in the downstream key layer. So this particular graphic was in downstream key number 4. And so I ended up selecting that as my clean feed. So that meant downstream keys 1 through 3 would still be recorded, which is where we have ProPresenter, which is generating the Q&A text that you see there, different lower thirds and things like that, even Video Pencil, if they had utilized that in this use case. All that would be captured, everything minus downstream key number 4, which is that live training bug. So now that we've gone back and edited this segment, none of the live training stuff appears on any of it. So that's a really nice feature that the ATEM has to be able to capture that. so that you're not permanently stuck with that live training bug on your recordings.
And we had a thing where we did some stuff with music where during the event they had some music they wanted to play, but they wanted to not have that music in the final version. And also with like Zoom guests, we didn't want Zoom guests to go back through the Zoom so they'd hear themselves. So we did some fancy audio routing too as well.
Yeah, so we had a lot of mix minuses happening with the Zoom, so that because Zoom was handling the Zoom guest audio, we just needed to capture that for the recording. But because Zoom was on a different computer using our normal Zoom workflow, we're able to send them everything audio-wise minus themselves so that they don't get any sort of echo or feedback. And then because of that same system, I was able to feed the copyrighted music back through to the Zoom and not capture that on our final recording, so that our recordings are perfectly clean. And then we were able to add royalty-free music onto the recordings after the fact.
I think you mean allegedly copyrighted. We can't really confirm or deny what type of music was played during this event.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to redo that section because I was thinking the same thing of like.
Oh no, that's fine. That's fine. I
Okay.
think we can keep going on. I think that's everyone understands.
Yeah. Morgan, you've said Zoom enough times. It's reminded me. We had some things with Zoom. So we used Zoom sessions to do this event. So I'm going to break this down as least complicated as I can. Zoom has 3 options available to do different sorts of live events. So there's Zoom webinars for webinars, Zoom sessions, and Zoom events. Zoom sessions and Zoom events are Zoom events products. Zoom webinars is not a Zoom events product. You can host webinars with Zoom events products, but you can't host events with Zoom webinars. The main thing is that we bought Zoom sessions for 2 reasons. One, it gets you a really nice landing page. They could download the workbook they needed and register, all of that stuff. Super great. The other is that it has 1080p support. Now, we've received word from Zoom in 2 different ways. Either A, you can get 1080p if you already had a 1080p enabled business account, or B, you can get 1080 if you bought Zoom sessions as a license. We're still exploring exactly what the truth is on that. It sounds like it's a very recent policy change, and it sounds like the whole company just isn't coordinated on that exact thing yet. But we couldn't get 1080p in our meeting. Now, the reason we did a meeting is we needed to bring random people up. They weren't planned beforehand, so we couldn't invite them as panelists or do any of that sort of thing that would have allowed us to use something like a Zoom webinar. And Zoom, though, at 720p, it ended up looking pretty good for our feed. I think the client was super happy. Everybody enjoyed it. And obviously, they have the high-quality 4K recording as well. But yeah, it was definitely hard to figure out what exactly the Zoom Sessions product was and was not supposed to provide. In fact, it's still unclear to me. It may be that 1080p is only if you do a webinar and not if you do a meeting. So just be on the lookout for that the next time you're doing a live event. If you select Zoom Sessions because you're like, great, it has 1080p, it may not be enabled by default. It may take a while to get a customer support ticket at the current time of filming, but it should be included for webinars for sure. As for meetings and other things, I'm not sure. It's very unclear right now. Again, very recent policy changes that have come down the line. So that's just a note that we dealt with when dealing with Zoom. Other than that, everything was super great. We also kind of wish we had done a breakout room. We realized this would have been a little more work, but to do Cammy's role, if we could have had a joinable breakout room that anyone could have joined when they wanted to ask a question on air, then it's a way smaller list of people to choose from.
Yeah.
So we're going to experiment with that.
Maybe.
And maybe that's not
it's
great.
friction. The problem is,
Yes.
Here's the thing that I've found out about Zoom, though. People have used Zoom. They have clear expectations. And when you create like even one extra click, it's just really hard on them. So from my perspective, I think we did it the right way of being able to just be in the Zoom. They can just ask the question and unmute their mic. And even that was a challenge for some people. So I think actually we did it a great way. But I understand how that production flow really makes some really nice things happen. But I think overall, this worked super awesome. I do have a quick little picture that I'm air playing. I just muted out the lady that was asking the question, since we probably don't have permission from her. But here she is on the side asking the question. I just put a big blue box over her. But that's what the question looked like as Isaac pasted that in so that we could see that on the screen. So it was super cool. It looked super clean. It was overall, it was such a nice polish point. It just felt really strong.
Love that 2-up shot too that is in that. It frames really well.
Yeah.
Plus with the two of them, we were able, since they weren't like reading from a teleprompter, we could use the big monitor, which helped them see, the person as well when they were talking to them.
And this is reminding me of another thing related to Cammy's thing with bringing on the specific person. I want to look into some sort of app that could exist that's like a cloud paste board. So it's just some web location, and maybe we use Notion for that. I don't know what we use for this, but some way to be able to very quickly copy and paste something onto this website and then copy and paste it back onto a different computer.
Sounds like a Notion.
Maybe that's just a Notion document, a Google Doc. I don't know what it is, but I realized that could have been the fast way to get Cammy the exact name, because we could have had Catherine just copy and paste who she's looking for into that document. Then,
Sure.
I can copy and paste the question into that document. That one centralized place to go for all of that stuff. We did need like a synced way to do it.
What was also helpful was that I had on my other monitor, I had like a view of the Q&A section. So if somebody asked a question, I could kind of preemptively see the person's name. So sometimes it'd be like, oh, Bobby has a question, and be like, okay, I might have to look up Bobby's name. And then like 10 minutes goes by and you're like, we're going to need Bobby to be pulled up. I'm like, yep, figured. So that was nice. But also random names from anywhere were also pulled out, which was
Sure.
Yeah, and man, by the end of it, Cammy, you were killing it on that. Because I'd be like, hey, can we get whoever? And you did it.
Thanks.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Which is one of the reasons why,
right.
If I saw somebody's name, I would already pull them up,
Yep.
so I wouldn't have to type frantically.
Because there was no reason not to assign them to the Zoom ISO
Yeah.
output, because worst case, nothing happened.
Yeah.
So it's like, go ahead and assign them, because
If we don't cut to it.
but even if we cut to it, if their camera's not on or whatever, and we're waiting on them, it was very easy for us to see, okay, they're not ready. We didn't have a branded Zoom ISO kind of fallback graphic. We just had the green that comes with it. That came into play one time when someone's camera got turned off like a little too soon or something. I can't remember exactly what it was. It's like, oh man, we just needed it to be that blue instead of the green.
Yeah, so that's a lesson learned.
That was just, we forgot to do that one little step, and it would have been nice.
Hey, Emma, I see that you're also with us this entire time, but haven't said anything. How you doing?
Here. I'm good.
Hey, give us some feedback from your experience.
Yeah, so I'm kind of in a more unique position on filming days, because while the rest of the team is in the control room or the studio, I'm in the green room or the conference room with the client. So I kind of get a little bit of insight of how they're feeling throughout the day. And one thing I kept overhearing from Kevin, which I've heard from clients before in the past, is he felt very overwhelmed and nervous in the studio with all the lights, monitors, cameras, and he was afraid that was showing on camera. And we thought he looked great, and he didn't sound nervous or feel nervous on camera, but we've been so intentional about the rest of the studio space, and we haven't been as intentional about our studio space and making that feel more comfortable to a client on a client experience, because it's for practical usage. So that was one thing that I've heard from him throughout the day. Every time he was coming off stage, he was just feeling sorts of anxiety and just feeling very overwhelmed. And
he wasn't able to come the day before, so
yeah.
We had kind of sat down with Courtney and really positioned everything like, okay, we'll put this over here and that over there. Hi. Cool. Thanks, Road. But we hadn't done that with him, so he didn't really have input.
And he's been here before, and he's had a lot of speaking experience. So I think he was just feeling very lights, camera, action, everything's live. If anything happens, it's live, which I've heard from clients that haven't even been on a live event, just like filming in there, how foreign and overwhelming it can feel to be in there when there's all these monitors, there's lights, there's cameras. It can feel very foreign and just
Yeah.
not natural. So that's one space that we've done like little touches to try and make it feel more comfortable for the client experience. But I would love to hear ideas of if anyone has any ideas of how to make a space feel more natural when it's not a natural thing to be on camera.
I think for him, it right off the bat, it was a little intimidating because with Courtney, we were able to get her in there the day before and say, okay, this is going to be your camera that you're going to talk to, and he hadn't had that debrief. He hadn't had that pre-planning. And so we had to do it. I think you had to brief him off stage.
Yeah.
And then once he came in, I would say, this is your camera. And he got it. Once he got it, okay, that's the camera I look at. But I think that would have been kind of disconcerting right from the very beginning to not know that. But it was like, oh, wait, he hasn't had that conversation yet.
And we could have easily made a video the night before, like just showing like, hey, Kevin, when you come in tomorrow, this is this part, this is this, you'll walk in here. That would have been, I mean, I had cell phone numbers. So that would have been an easy thing I could have done.
I think we need a very clear way to designate to everybody, you're looking at that camera too, because the camera numbers that we use don't show on the front.
Right.
And then also they don't know, they can't see the tally lights, especially on the cameras with the prompter, because it's hidden by the prompter mechanism. So we've got to have a very clear way to say, this is your camera. I've even thought it'd be funny to have like their picture on the, taped to the camera.
I was thinking
something showing the tally light reflecting or something. I don't know. I have to come
the monitors, Andre, like the add-on monitors that can go on the bottom of the teleprompter.
Right.
You could use that some way by putting like Kevin's shot. And by the way, I do want to say Courtney and Kevin were awesome, but Kevin as like a person is like, he has an infectious positive attitude, and so he accepted our hospitality at a higher level than others have, like in the past, just because he's so grateful and such an awesome guy. So he was able, like before I left, like the way he said like thanks was like in a lot more meaningful way. And the reason that excites me is because I felt him like come into himself and feel at ease. So I watched him get more confident, him and Courtney together, and then also I watched Isaac and
Catherine.
Well, Catherine as well, which I have something to say about her.
Okay.
She was awesome. No, Morgan and Isaac, they worked together as a team. So, like, they solidified a little bit more. They did, and we're doing this more than once with them. So now I'm just excited to see how good the next one will be.
Yeah.
And then one after that.
I think, to just kind of wrap up this show, what I would say, big high points for me was the client came super prepared, and it just made it super obvious. Like, everything went so smoothly. Multiple times I was able to get up and walk around and talk to people because there was just like, there's no stress here. Everything's just running like it needs to. The team, all of you just killed it. Like, we were down an audio engineer, a last minute death in the family of our audio engineer made it where we didn't have one. Morgan, you jumped in and pulled audio engineering in addition to doing a fairly complex TDing role. So thank you for doing that. Isaac, you worked really hard on getting all the planning that they had done into ProPresenter, and that just paid off in leaps and bounds. Cammy, you're jumping in on new stuff. Tyler, you jumped in to be camera operator. It's like whatever it takes. Everyone was just doing whatever it took to do every single thing. And Jay, you just overall helped everything run really smoothly. But in addition to that, you shot a bunch of BTS stuff. And so... and of course, Emma, you did great just taking care of all the customers all day long. They just kept talking about what a great job you were doing and taking care of everybody. So I just felt like this was possibly one of the best, cleanest, least bumpy shows that we've done of a live event. It just felt so smooth, even in the midst of some fairly challenging last-minute change things that had happened. All that planning paid off. I want to take the not their actual slides, but each slide that they had represented, I want to build a template off of that, because a lot of clients ask us like, which slides should we include? This is a great framework for us to use. I just thought it was very thorough, and it seemed like it had everything we're looking for. So great event. It was super awesome. And again, listen, we just thank you guys for watching this. I hope these little details are helpful as we share some of this stuff. It's a lot of fun to share. It was a lot of very fun stuff for us to go to NAB and actually meet some of you and hear how these are impacting. We just had a really cool call earlier today with some friends in Germany and how they were just mentioning how much the show's been helping. So that's cool for me to hear, because we are taking time out of our day to just kind of invest in you. And so thanks for watching all of these. It's super cool to have you guys join us in. And so I guess we could do kind of a behind the scenes shot of everybody and we'll wave bye. But hey, thanks for watching us. Until next time.